Well, I don't want that yet. Not yet. Oh, I don't have an option, I guess.
Yeah. Our neighbors so
Oh.
excited.
No.
Every idea, every
And different
person.
shades of.
I know I've already tried to, and they just don't show up. So I have to go to black anyway.
This is what I was.
I think every person should get their own color.
Right?
There's our.
We have options. Plenty of lot.
Good.
Yep.
All right.
I don't know if I should stick around. Let's recap everything. What I did was I took the liberty and everything that was set in the pictures, I kind of typed it up for us, because I need it all to be in like one place and not have to look back and forth to something handwritten. And I asked John to make sure everyone had a copy in case you weren't able to print it out. Also, there were questions from the last meeting that I asked for answers to, which everyone got within an email. And I also had asked him to print this out. Okay, because this gives us some pretty black and white answers to some of our questions. So the way that I think that we should approach this is, remember what our goals were. Okay, so we had 5 different goals. The maximum one would cost us, do we have that? That is the one that says $120,000, plus the livable wages for staff, growing services, and lowering the insurance contributions. Okay, so that there. Okay, so let me do this, I'm over here, right now it's waiting. Okay, so our goal one would be that we need to come up with 120. Okay. Just to keep the budget as it stands now. Okay, so 2 is livable wages, so 1 plus wages, which equates to so that 120,000 plus get the staff at 46%. Get the 46% of the staff that are currently below livable wage to what MIT says is the livable wage. Gives them a 27% increase in their wages, and that's another 200. So 1, this is just keeping it at status quo. Oh, God, I do not.
No, you had it at the end of
Oh, I
it,
did?
yeah, of the question, and then you had scenario 2, would be a combination of both. 240. And then 29.
So is it 290 plus the 120?
It says would require an additional 290, so that would be the 120.
Right. Keep it straight. Trying to keep things, okay. So we have the 120 plus growing service. So that's 120 plus Growing services. Oh, so. I guess it would depend on what services we want. We're gonna have to figure out what this number would be. So that we can have what. And then everything. On the four is. Livable wages, so this is 2. Plus lower insurance. So this is 2, so this is 410. Plus, what is our contributions to? I think like,
He's a little bit different.
yeah, this is what Amber asked a question. She wanted clarification regarding the cost of bringing everyone to a livable wage rate. Does the total 290 include our 120 deficit, or is this solely the cost of wage increase?
Just the wages.
So that is his explanation, which has confused. So do we know what it would cost if we had lower insurance? What do they? What should be there?
Doesn't look
Still
like
cost.
they-
Page 3 has insurance costs, but I don't know that it has, oh, at the bottom.
What? The employee portion.
Mhm. Yeah, the 290 is just a livable wage, addition 290.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure I was reading it.
That's right.
So. Our 5%. Okay, if we adopted the county's contribution model, which would be lower cost, would cost an additional 4,876. So that's 4 and 4.
So, uh,
Okay, and then 5 is everything. So would be 2, 3, 4, and 5. So we would need the 120 plus 240, 290 plus, we don't know this number. But let's just say for easy figuring, growing services, we'll just double what we need.
That's right. That'll be close.
And that's. We will need another 120. Awesome. 4, 8, 7.
You ready?
Yeah.
1,184,000. Whatever those last three numbers.
872.
872.
Something.
The other ones,
I don't think that makes it.
Also,
there's 120,000 in place, you remember?
Yeah,
Okay, because of the road service.
yeah, but up here,
Oh,
when
we
you
did
say,
see that.
when you say livable wages, I'm just looking at the paper on here.
Oh, I
We have two restoration of lost funds, when you add 1 and 2 together, it was 243.
Right.
And then you have the 290,
Which was 533.
right,
What's on this paper?
you know, down here at the bottom, number 4, where it says scenario 1.
I'm sorry,
This one right here.
I'm trying to find where I'm at. Okay, I got it.
And see here, it says scenario 2 is, and we need an additional 123,000. And when you combine it with what the 120, you get 243. So, and then your number 2 should read 243.
So it's not plus 290?
No, the 290.
So it'd be
was-
290 is 23.
Yeah, 290 is the livable. That's number 3, that's where the number should be for number 3.
No.
And well, she put it up in number 2, yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But that 120 should actually read 2, shouldn't it?
This
read 23, yeah,
And that's because what?
because you're gonna do 1 plus the additional, we seek restoration of funding lost in 2024, we need an additional 123, or in combination with scenario 1, it will be a total of 243. So you're adding the 120 twice. Like if you put 243, that was scenario 2.
243 plus 290?
Yeah. Well, the 290 was then
30.
yeah, you're gonna,
Okay, so. I'm not sure where it is 243.
So 120 is status quo.
right.
Yeah.
243 is if it was restored to the original budget.
Okay,
We don't have that.
We don't have that. Yeah. Which we did not include that in our goal at all.
No, we did not.
Thank you. We can add another. Which could,
No, that's okay. I thought that's what they did as the one.
but that's
here.
restoring it to one pre-budget, right?
Right.
So number 5.
Yeah.
2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5.
Right.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
No, but what we want is 1 plus livable wages plus growing through plus lowering.
Okay.
So not adding the same amount.
Right.
120.
4,872.
4, 8.
I came up with 534, 872. Or did I skip a number?
That's not what I have, but it's really close to it.
This is like my every nightmare. I never thought it'd be like this again.
534, what?
872.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
No, these are our pie in the sky goals, right?
Right.
Mhm.
Yes, this is just what our goals are, okay? So, and we have, what we want to know is, where do we want to shoot for? I mean, do we want to shoot for another $500,000 with whatever our ideas are? Or what we intend to suggest going to equal 534,000,
Can I throw out option 6,
which
which
is,
is just livable wages?
and not 120?
Not the original status quo.
But what that would be for us is to cut that $120,000 out of the budget. Okay, so with doing that, we would have to come up with $120,000 cuts, because right now, we have that extra money that we took out of that fund to just keep us status quo.
Yeah, but that's what we're essentially looking to make up
Is the one
already in number one.
What?
That's what we're essentially already doing to make up a number one.
Yes,
I'm looking at, instead of doing a 120, we're looking at 290 instead.
in order to keep the budget and to
Yeah.
keep the budget as status quo, plus going to livable wages, it's gonna have to be the 120 plus the 290.
I'm saying no status quo.
Right, she's saying, forget what we have now.
Okay,
What she's saying is, if
starting a new
everybody,
budget.
yeah, or,
We're cutting.
So cut the 120 and then add the 290.
Yeah, instead of looking
Yes.
for the 410,
Okay,
I'm saying option 6 is look at 290.
And just make cuts for
And
the
it's just
original one.
livable wages, we're not looking at the status quo.
okay, so what you're saying is option 6.
Option
Is
6
to
to
cut-
me is the priority of staff.
$20,000 in the budget. And then add livable wages. Right?
Yes, because priority 1 to me looks at or goal number 1 looks at the priority of just, buildings, resources, materials. I looked at this as a priority of staff at the end of the day.
Okay, so if we're going to look at this and give livable wages, we really have to come up with,
yes.
right?
If we're looking at.
If we're looking at, but we have to cut this from the budget.
So we're still going to need the 410 to come. You're gonna have to make 120 in budget cuts and then come up to 290.
So it pretty much is still 10, but just looking at it.
It's true.
Okay.
And the number one
But you're
is,
still gonna have to cut that 120
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
to give us
I think it's just
a
about
balanced budget.
putting the money, because like the status quo has those already in budget lines.
Right.
That's what we're looking at, and it's more of prioritizing those budget lines
Right, understood.
elsewhere.
Understood.
Yeah.
So, do we want to look at pie in the sky? I
No,
mean, like our.
I'm so sorry.
Right.
We absolutely have to do.
Exactly.
I feel like I think that we could talk about this forever. And I don't know if it's my ADHD or what, but I'm like, we have got to cut to the chase. We've got this deadline of January 6th. We are not gonna get $500,000 with bake sales and like a black and white ball in this room. And I can't talk about it anymore. I will lose my mind.
I
And-
think those suggestions are best left for way down the road.
Mhm.
yeah, I agree. I was looking at it too, trying to come up, and I was looking at this pile of all these numbers and all. And it's almost like there's two goals. One is, what do we do right now? And then what do we do to improve later? And right now, we're looking at 1 and 2, however that combination works out.
Or 6.
Right,
Right.
yes.
But I want to
Having
make sure
said
that
that-
everyone's in agreement as to what our next steps are gonna be, because we're gonna have to look at how we're gonna cut
right.
120 out of the budget and be able to provide 290 into the budget for livable wages.
I think we should ignore plans 3, 4, 5. I think we are not in a position to grow services.
No,
No, that's
That-
for down the line.
If we're talking about, if we're like establishing goals right now, we should not be even be talking about that. That's something hopefully we could do. But we shouldn't be aiming for that. We should be aiming for getting, our budget's really bad. Like, I don't know if you guys know, it's like really bad. So we should not even be talking about that.
That was pie in the sky.
I know, but now
So
we're getting,
right now, we're focused on.
right now we're getting to
number
the point we're not, we're gold pie in the sky and we're going
six.
crack.
Yeah, so.
Lower insurance, I've not heard any employee complain about their insurance costs. So is that valid?
Yeah,
I've never heard an employee
Well,
complain.
if you get rid of 3, the auto gets rid of 4 and 5 right
Yeah.
there. because
Right.
they're part
And
of
then
it.
5 is,
I think 6 is where we are right
I think,
1, 2, 6.
I
Are
think
doing
1, 2,
valid.
and 6 are kind of an iteration of the same
Same
thing
thing,
at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But I think we need to like figure out the number 1 before we get to the number.
Absolutely. So, let's figure out either, do we want to figure out how to increase the to what we need just to balance the budget as it's written now? Or do we want to cut the 120 out of the budget? Which could be one or two of the same thing. Because, if we're looking at, changing cell phone prices, that's gonna decrease that line item. Okay, so that's finding the 120, but in a different way. Does
I think in my brain, they're kind of the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's look at these two kind of being the same concept. And we're gonna look at it either raising the money or cutting the budget to get this balance. And then we'll look at how we can actually increase the budget to make a livable wage. Because that'll come either with budget cuts, line items, or
I think realistic right now, we're looking at just more budget cuts. Because I don't see any source of additional income coming in. And anything that we talked about, the increased fines, phone service, they're not going to get us to that number anytime soon. Right. If to do that, we're looking at 410,000 in budget cuts. And can the system
Great.
live with that?
Great.
And I have said on being in education, a principal having to sit there and do the same thing. What's more important? Do we keep the door open? Or do we pay everybody a little wage? And sometimes you can't do both. It just doesn't work. And having cut staff, having been there and having to cut staff just to keep, with schools, it's a little bit different because you have to have the door open. But having to cut the same thing, cut phys ed, cut those things, just to keep the doors open. And that might be where we are right now, that I don't see where we're going to get the 410 out of the budget that you're saying is horrible right now.
But realistically, you may have to seriously consider closing the door.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
The
so-
cuts.
I mean, because even at not giving the staff a
Right,
livable
oh,
wage,
yes.
we are operating on a shoestring.
Right, and I agree with that. To get to the 120, we're going to have to do some cuts.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's look at, first, Ally, you have additional ideas to
I
what we
have-
discussed last time.
Some of them are the ideas that we discussed last time, but some of them are a little more in depth. There are things that I received as the ombudsperson. Basically, for those who don't know, people send me the things and then I work as a voice for them so they can remain anonymous. So I have just, some budget recommendations that they had sent me. And then I have my own. And I don't know if you would want me to start with that or.
Well, I think we need to, we have our recap of what we all said.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that we have heard everything, because if we start cutting, they're still not heard.
Yeah, I think, one of the main things that I saw when looking through it, was a big one was asking the board to consider which leadership positions we can actually afford this.
Okay, so we're talking about salaries?
Yeah.
But specifically looking at leadership and really considering what is in those contracts and, basically, I know we had talked a little bit about like outsourcing some of the stuff, but really looking at those and are they worth what we are paying? Can we afford those positions as they are? That was one of the big ones that, and having wage caps on those positions.
I printed out everything that was on the supplemental documents on the website. So I actually have that list here if you wanna look at it, Renee, maybe review that. Start. One, we just go down.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Who's gonna push these on you?
There's my big head in the way.
The app might disagree.
Bring the app.
Item B.
Are ever used them? I know that not of our.
Do we have a document that says every position and everything?
Mm-hmm. So it's kind of.
Binder.
I don't think we do.
We do. I was gonna say,
Not in the,
I can't find it in my binder.
we have like ranges for positions, but not how much is actually paid for,
Okay.
which is what the document standard off the website.
Then we have a library organization, and some general staffing, like numbers, hours.
I have one.
I have one too.
That might just be mine.
And I think Lisa put it up on the site.
Yeah, I think we did too. She had made a document with all that. That's
Maybe I'm wrong.
that's how
Yeah.
I have one.
Yep, what does it look like? Do you have it?
Information.
It's the one that Lisa had made.
Yeah.
She did a breakdown and it was details by account, but this was not ever handed out in the meeting. It was one that had to be printed out.
That's what I'm saying. I read it in the site. This is not in the.
And it just, it's a breakdown literally,
So if I go to the site, it'll be there.
Fiscal year 24 expenses, details by account, but yeah, it was, one that I was uploaded after the fact.
So everybody's gonna be on that thing. Oh, that's not the thing, that's the way to this.
Oh, I can't even see that.
But we currently don't have the bottom one, which is coordinator of programs and events.
I want to say that one might be showing as case, because that isn't what I.
Really? Okay. Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of split between Shay and Kate.
But is that budget
Well-
line still showing in the budget?
Job description.
Oh my goodness.
Well, in this category, Renee, wouldn't we only make a suggestion to the board of? Absolutely. I mean,
Yeah,
but we can't say, well, they should be paid this much and not that. much. I mean,
No, but if, regardless of what our suggestions are, something's gotta give
I know
in
that.
FY 26. So
Well, what I'm saying is looking at the numbers, I don't know what that's gonna mean to us unless we just wanna say they should have a 5%.
well, that's why we're gonna look at, we have job descriptions,
Okay,
okay? So, and we look at what the job description is and what the salary is,
and how about their education or their degree?
all of that.
the thing is at the end of the day, all of this has to go to the board either way, so it's all a suggestion to the board. They're the only ones who can approve.
Right, I knew that. That's why I said, well, now maybe you can say that, reduce
Yeah.
a certain percentage.
That's the recommendation was mostly seeing the board.
Even English speaker,
Investigate.
Six.
Divided into that divided by 6.
Divided by 6.
6, yes.
I'm ready.
Yeah.
37,101.
$299,830. 72 divided by 10. Category 115.
Because the county. $38.
That's a service.
No, I just need where.
But the county would not.
102,995 divided by.
$34, $330.
334. Yeah. It says right here, understand, we had that. We have down,
I had exactly, yeah, banded. Right. Every. Even higher than that certain figure based on the jobs.
And this one, and interesting. And
this.
comes out.
All right. $57,309. Like 7.
81, 87. 81, beat me. 87.
That's on there, we,
Did you do that in your head?
That's all of it.
well, now.
But of course, keep in mind that everything up here, they have to pay taxes. And so so whatever these salaries are, they have to pay FICA, and then health insurance.
That's the gross payment. Right, take home.
Were there other suggestions, Ally?
I mean, I can read off what was recommended from the staff. And I can also read mine. If y'all want to hear my voice, it's longer than necessary.
You want me to read them?
No, I can read them. One of the first ones that I got, their suggestions were closing 2 smaller branches. Western Port sits on a floodplain, requires an extra $20K yearly for flood insurance. This cost will surely increase over time and is unsustainable. Washington Street would be the other one. The building belongs to the county. It's not in great shape, and there's already 2 branches in Cumberland. Reconstructing our administrative positions and pay scales. HR would become a part-time position. IT could be outsourced. Board of Ed might be an option. Salary caps on highest paid employees. And then cutting unnecessary expenses, memberships that are unused or underused, memberships that have nothing to do with the library directly. Review admin cell phone plans for better rates or eliminate altogether. Stop purchasing big ticket items that we don't use or hardly use, like the outreach fan, the resources not being used to its full potential. As for sustainability, they wrote grant writing could be its own position or outsourced. Fundraising has to be consistent and ongoing. Consolidated Friends Group or Library Foundation would not give immediate results. These suggestions would have to be formed and grown. Second one has quite a long list of recommendations. On top, close Western Port Library is one, and they provided the amounts, $65,785. Close Georges Creek Library, which would be $53,472. Reduce LaVale operating hours to 42 hours per week instead of the current.
But none of those are new to what we said last time.
No, I said some of them were more of a expansion
Okay.
on some of them.
Well, when we get to those,
Yeah,
I just want to hear the new ones because
Okay.
we've already got those on the table.
yeah,
And I just want to make sure that we're not going to duplicate. our
Okay.
efforts.
yeah. One is disperse full-time staff to outreach and contracts of part-time employees. Let's see, reduction of services, janitorial services and upkeep services. Do HR remain full-time and take on outreach departments? Then implement wage freeze, wage caps. Sell some of our buildings. I had gone into more specifics of like specific things to cut, so I will hold off.
Okay.
And the only other thing I had was, a complete reduction in salary of the executive director. Also to pay for his own.
Okay, we already have.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the big things that, that looks like would cut quite a bit off of the budget is housing. I mean, that we've discussed that several years now. And, I just want to make a couple notes. Myself and the executive director of the Department of Social Services brought to John's attention this past week, a grant for a computer lab. Okay. And my suggestion was if we didn't like disperse the computers throughout all of the libraries, to condense the library portion of either Georges Creek or Western to, you know, like a third of the building, reduce their collection, and use the other half for workforce development. Now, I went and I spoke to Melanie Chapman, who is basic ed at Allegheny College, and Candace Snavely at Western Maryland Consortium. Both of them thought it was a fantastic idea, and that they would definitely bring resources to that library. Okay, so that would be able to eliminate the two people because they would have staff, whatever's going on in the other, and there would still be a library portion too.
But the library would still be responsible for the building.
Well, whatever income is generated from the other portion, whether it be grants, we charge people for that portion, which would cover then a lot of the expenses of that building. So it's not just the library covering it. You're utilizing 2/3 of the space of a library for something other than what its intent is, but you're charging those entities to hold trainings, to hold, just like Western Maryland Works, but they have all the machinery there. There's really nothing for, the future's looking at AI and, drones and the other thing.
Big data. Big data. Big
Yes.
data.
It's,
Yeah.
and we're not equipped in this county to service that. So they're looking at ways to start training people who want jobs in livable wages for these kinds of things. So,
What would be the estimated usage? It sounds like we would be looking at keeping our library open on kind of a big hit.
well, I mean, you would have to sketch that out. Just looking at, just preliminary, that portion of the county doesn't have any. Okay, so, and
I guess I have a hard time because looking at the usage of the actual library, which has been underutilized, but
So,
I mean, for years.
condensing it down to just something so that families can take their kids or whatever the, how do I say this politically correct? the reasons that people want the libraries open, but they don't really utilize them. And just the thought of taking the library away. This is just a different way to utilize the space.
I'm just more
And potentially
concerned
want
about.
to bring in grant money.
Yes, grant money and,
It's a lot of money going into workforce development and going into anything related to data analytics, cybersecurity, you know, those things. And relatively insulated from changes in politics.
So is this something that's been approved and it's in the works?
No. This is something that's come through. And, you know, we wanted to bring it to John's attention that you have to think outside the box. Okay, that libraries, you want them to be community hubs. We have those two libraries that are underutilized. How can we better utilize that space?
So
Okay.
I'm sorry, you already said this. What cuts would be made? I hear grant money is being added.
The cuts that would be made would be the collections.
Yeah.
Okay, staff,
How are you gonna,
because
okay,
there's gonna be staff for the other part. So there's still two people in the building, because that's my understanding, correct? Yeah.
yeah,
I have finish what you're saying and then I have.
And then costs for the overhead, like the lights, because only 1/3 of the cost will be charged to the library.
the two staff members you're saying they wouldn't have to be paid by the library system?
No, you would reduce the staff.
They would be library staff also
It would
other
just be
side.
like
You would have,
works library person.
Right. Thank you. Makes sense.
I just have a hard time throwing that into the decision making of all of this when it's not something that's set in stone.
But it's something that we need to think about,
Should be on the table.
And
that
it's,
there's ways to increase our revenue,
Yeah,
okay? But we have to think different
yeah.
of the utilization of the space.
Well, how quickly would something like that go into effect?
If the grant was received, probably fast. But it's gonna take effort. I mean, it's gonna take other grant writing, to do construction, to reduce the portion of the library. But if you have other partnerships coming into it, they can bring their money to do some of that. These are just ideas, and this just came up, so I just am saying this because I want you to realize that there are other options, that we don't just have to cut everything or cut out a library completely. That there's ways that we can utilize the space just different. That it's not just the I'm just using that as an example.
Yeah.
Georges Creek Library.
I think,
It would be Georges Creek Library and Workforce Development Station. But it would be like a community hub. It wouldn't just be a library.
my concern would be that it's a little too late. In that, the fact that Allegheny County Library System has been running with 6 branches, and I don't, at this point, not even gonna point at any particular, but running with 6 branches when they can't sustain 6 branches. And yeah, you could increase different resources and partnerships at those ones, but if we're talking about sustainability in the long run, we've been sustaining 6 branches when we can't sustain 6 branches, and now we're paying the price for it. And that's my concern.
And I mean, I think you could close, just like whoever said, I wrote close the branch on a floodplain. Close that branch.
That's why.
And then, right, and then,
And that's-
you can, and so then that's your 125. And then you can do this workforce development with Georges Creek, because if you want to say, we value our staff, which you do, these numbers are ridiculous that we're looking at up here. This is embarrassing. So if you close a branch, which is a hard decision, you make another branch, this workforce development, collaborate with ACM, collaborate with You know, I've got a couple of folks at ACM who I think should be at the table besides Melanie. And I think Blueprint, I think ACPS has a lot, you know, Blueprint money that they could work with you. But I think bottom line is you're gonna get, if you close Georges Creek, Western Port, and Washington Street, you'd have $426,000 and you could pay your staff. And you could make longer hours at the libraries that are open and have them work. And so, I mean, like, I'm happy, like, I'm glad we have a lot of ideas, but I'm with Ally. It's like it's gonna be big picture stuff. It's, you know, you
It's
can't,
stuff that, yes, it will be great to implement and it'll be
Yeah.
lovely to implement, but we're at a point in time where we don't have the time. Like, we've used it up. We've used up the time. We keep placating over the years to continue to keep a branch open by going by the bare minimum, I mean, we've completely emptied a reserve for this. To
We
the point,
established in the very first meeting that a library system with this size budget only had 3 branches.
Right.
and I'm just worried about the sustainability long run when I don't think we are going to get more money in recent years. I think we are going to continue to get budget cuts. And even if we come in with really fantastic ideas, someone still has to come in and implement those ideas, and you can't do that with a stretched, thin staff. And I mean, they take time and they take years and they do take partnerships, but as someone who has sought out partnerships, everyone else who is also a nonprofit is stretched just as thin.
Yeah.
So
Oh, my
I'm just concerned about the longevity that we have.
Help, Will. Help. I got you.
These posted note ones.
I do think if we're looking at cuts, our biggest things are buildings, but then the next biggest thing is wages. And then, of course, we have those.
And I think they go hand in hand. If we cut 1, 2, 3 buildings, we want to cut equivalent staff for 1, 2, 3 buildings.
You have to for those cost savings.
Because we're not, I mean, if we go down to 3 branches, we're not going to keep the staff we have now in 3 branches.
Well, actually, you actually could, because your 3 branches, your 3 biggest branches are understaffed.
That's the problem, is that.
And
I'll just read what I wrote for a second about my priorities that have to deal with this essentially. I just directly, the status quo isn't sustainable. I've been on the leadership team meeting. I was on the leadership team meeting when all these budgets were happening. I left my position, because it was overwhelming. And I stepped away for my own health because, everyone here is deeply underappreciated, deeply underpaid. And it's a very thankless job. When it comes down to it, the staff are the heart of the library. And without them, the buildings can't provide the community their needs. They can't meet their needs. It doesn't matter how many buildings you have or where you have them. If you don't have adequate staff, if they're completely stretched thin, if they're not getting the support that they need, then you're just gonna keep perpetrating a toxic work environment. And you're gonna continue to do a disservice to the community overall. Passion alone just isn't going to retain people, and if you close a branch, that then moves some of that staff. Now, granted, some of the smaller branches do have part-time staff, and at the end of the day, maybe those are positions that would then need to be reevaluated. But keeping at least the full-time one would then provide some of that buffering into those busier branches that are currently really understaffed at the end of the day. Who just are stretched thin and trying to do all the services that are expected of them. That was kind of what I went into looking at. If we're going to prioritize staff, that means I have to no longer prioritize buildings at the end of the day, because we don't have enough staff for the amount of buildings.
And that's true, and I agree with you 100%. But if you pulled the numbers for the 400,000 from this sheet that we got, the totals for each library include wages and benefits. So I'm just saying.
Yeah.
What your point is valid, if the numbers we're using to figure out what the closings mean include the wages and benefits of the people working in those buildings.
Yeah.
If not, then we don't have a problem. You can reassign the staff. But if the cost savings is based on not just the building costs,
So
but
can
the cost of the
somebody
people in the
please
building.
subtract out the,
Yeah, I
wages?
can't math that fast.
I had done the Western Port one because I had looked at that because I knew 72% of the budget is wages and salaries. And also I brought up them looking at leadership salaries because,
we'll get to that.
yeah, that's, I'm just
We're gonna
saying
get-
that, like, if you're going to.
Depending on how fast you can sell a building as well, GC and West.
Yes.
It doesn't really pertain to all of this, but as a community member on this committee, I've been feeling a little frustration the last couple of meetings. Just because I know this is a scary thing. I mean, I've worked in the nonprofit community. I've been on soft money. I totally understand being in a staff position and how truly scary and just the unknown of it is, and to be in a room with people that are trying to decide the fate of what's going to happen. I totally 100% get that. But every person in this room is here because we genuinely care about the library system and we care about the people who work in the library system. And sometimes it feels like suggestions get put out there because they come from a great place, but they're getting shot down awfully fast. And I just want to make sure that everybody understands that everything is coming from a good place. And if the library staff already has an idea of how we can do this, like if you've mapped the math and you know, like, here's the plan that's going to do it, can we just talk about that? Because I feel like we've been doing this since August. And that, exactly, 100%.
Very far ahead of us.
So if you all have a folder or you've all, because you've come very well prepared to these meetings, like super well prepared. So I kind of have a feeling that maybe you have that, like, you know, if we close these 2 libraries and we move these people to here and we do this, we're going to hit that number. If you have that, can I just make a plea that we talk about that right now? Can we do that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. If that exists, can we do that?
Ally, what was your plan?
Yeah, there you go.
Maybe you can read the whole thing.
You want me to read the whole
I
thing?
want you to read the whole thing.
Please.
Sorry, I didn't mean to, but I can't.
No, I think it's hard too, because it's a lived experience, you know, and these are arguments that have been happening within the library.
Yeah, I sense that. I get
Yeah.
that. I understand. You guys are really
Can I
super well
just
prepared.
say, I had this conversation with John earlier. Even with all 6 staff members here today, we are hitting about 20 people in need of tech services. That takes up to a half an hour. Can you imagine being open for 10 hours? And part of those hours are just 3 people each trying to help somebody for a half an hour and still trying to run the circulation. How ridiculous and crazy that is. The phone is ringing, children are screaming, and people need help finding books, and you have to help this person who is trying to navigate a world that they were not prepared for. And I just want to let you know, this is what is happening every single day. And it's to the point, I think all my staff, including myself, are on medication.
Welcome to the world of
Yeah.
nonprofit.
Started out there. You know, but I'm just saying, you know, we don't take these things lightly when we suggest or say them. We don't say them to be hurtful. We want everyone to be okay, but sometimes it's just not possible.
Well, I want to make a point that, you know, this committee has to be the ones that agree on whatever the suggestions are to the board, okay? And yes, the library staff that are here have this lived experience. They're coming from emotion. A lot of the, because they have not been heard. Now they're being heard, okay? So whatever is decided, whether it be the library's staff's, it's coming from this committee, Okay, so
And I get that, I 100%
Okay, I
get
just
that.
wanna
I
make
100% get it. I just feel like
because
they're like 6 months ahead of us on the homework. And we've spent since August going round and round with like spending time coming up with ideas to just have them shot down. And I'll be honest, I've been real frustrated with that process because all of us are volunteering our time to be here. And if they're 6 months or a year ahead of us on this homework, I want to see their homework.
No, I agree with you. I mean, that's what I see here is, it's like you bring us in here, like we're gonna have a magic pill for the solution, which we don't. You know, I'll put that, but you've lived this life and you know what it's gonna take to do it. I think that's what she's saying is bring us into it and see if we agree on this concept and
Yes.
then move forward.
Yes, yes, thank you. That.
I will say that, the ideas that I bring as a library staff, I know are fueled by lived experience. And so I am open because at the end of the day, I am gonna have some biasness, I'm gonna have some blinders on, and I am open to better suggestions that aren't fueled by that at the end of the day. It's just, I have been frustrated with what little has been shared with the rest of the committee at the end of the day, when, there was concerns even when throwing some of the graphs out there, and it's like, we're just throwing a bunch of information at people who haven't worked in the library and who might not understand this and fully get the scope of it, or, who don't get a lot of that background information. So sometimes my eagerness to speak comes from, I want to tell you more, I want to tell you more, and I want to tell you this, and, did you?
Yeah,
Do you want me to?
Go
Okay.
for it.
I could read the rest of the staff as well, who had given recommendations. I won't give you my personal backstory or anything, just that, again, I went in with the priority of staff. I didn't get the full numbers because some of these things, could greatly depend. It's just more of the recommendations that, I kind of just put together. One, I don't believe fundraising is realistically cover deep budget reduction, which I think is what we're at the end of the day gonna have to face. I approach this as if I was running a business, looking at what is essential versus what I think would be considered a luxury at this point. And again, I think that funding is just going to continue to be cut within the next few years, and we are gonna have to get creative. I think unifying the Friends group would be great. That's up to them. They have often held an us versus them mentality, and getting them to join a unified group probably difficult. Increase the out-of-state fee, increase replacement fees, cut the security guard itself. That is a luxury. I think that at the end of the day, that could be considered a fundraisable cost. All staff making above 50K or whatever the board would deem appropriate are on a pay freeze. They are already above the living standard and have seen a larger increase over the past 7 years than any other staff members. Cut the hours of the veil because they're stretched thin. We currently have 6 vehicles, why? I have that we would cut at least 2 of those, one of which is currently only being used by one person and is only allowed to be used by one person. I think having, or it might be 5 vehicles, 5 vehicles is a luxury. And honestly, I don't really understand why we're paying insurance on that many vehicles and upkeep on that many vehicles when we have 2 perfectly fine transit vans that can move things. We also have a Prius for branch visits, and that could be reduced even more if you cut down the routes, depending on if you would cut a branch. The cell phones, I do not understand the cell phones and why we are paying an upwards of $4,000 a year for that. These are little things that I looked at as they would fill in some of the other cuts that we might have to make along the way. These are not like the big ones, these are just the little ones. The cell phones are for a selected few staff members. Only 4 staff members have them. These 4 staff members also have office phones. They should either have one, but not both. There's also hotspots. We have 3 hotspots for outreach. I do not think that that is required. I think it would be okay with 1. Reduce memberships, the organizational memberships. I don't know what here is needed. Do these have any nonprofit fee differences? Who do these benefit? Are they benefiting the library or one individual? Rotary, as far as I know, that's only benefiting the executive director. I don't know what else comes of that, and I don't know if the library's ever seen any benefit from that.
You make connections
Yeah,
by going to Rotary meetings.
but I feel
And
there's,
if you had a fundraising program, you could do fundraising off of it because it's the business community, but if you don't do fundraising, then you're not.
that's more of like, who is this benefiting in the long run? Is it being utilized, I guess, to the best of its abilities? Reduced programming, which is already pretty abysmal, but I think at this point, we need to look at partnerships and, let the really fancy things we want to do be fundraiser, but at this point, if you really want them to happen, you're gonna have to look at the community to tell you that they want them. And that's not great. Also, reduce collections. They just keep getting reduced, but at this point, you know, if we cut down on a branch or, even if we're cutting down on certain collections, at that point, we're just gonna have to look at what is actually checking out. And then my difficult recommendations come from mostly salaries. Reduction in salary of the executive director. While experience and tenure certainly merit recognition, the growth of the salary has been disproportionate, especially considering it has continued to increase even during periods the library faced challenges in compensating other staff. While most staff positions have increased by around $4 over the past 7 years, that position in and of itself alone has increased around 12,000. I don't know the possibilities of what it takes to ask a director for a pay cut. I know that this is the first year that the executive director has gone to a smaller insurance plan, but in the past, we were paying, I think, in upwards of over $35,000 a year in health insurance. And I feel like that's something that was greatly overlooked. Outsourcing or cutting the hours of HR. I think that this could save and possibly the current salary is $57,000, and you could possibly cut that in half. I don't, depends on if you would outreach it, if you go to part-time, what you would look at for the actual pay scale of it. This is the third highest position in the library system. I feel like there could be options to lessen this cost by sharing it with the county or other nonprofits. I also know that as the ombudsperson, that this current position is not being fulfilled in a very good way. And it has seemed to show that it could be done in a part-time capacity based on the amount of time that seems to be focused on it. Cut or outsource IT. This is the second highest paid position, and I feel there could be options out there to lessen this cost at this point, because I do think that having a singular IT that works for 7 hours a day, which I admittedly do not know, it's a very secretive position, and I do not know what happens in the full-time scope of the day. That I have rarely seen the person who works the position, even though they have an office at the library. I think a pay freeze for all the other leadership team members and a reduction of hours at all the branches would be on the docket.
Can I ask a question? Reduction of hours means the hours that you're open as a branch. Okay.
Yeah. And I would say a reduction in a day, even of the week, because right now we're open some of the branches Friday and Saturday, and we can only open those certain ones because we don't have enough staff to keep them all open. And if you cut one of those days, then you just make the staff work the same days each week, and then you at least would.
But they're not losing hours. It's just the institution is not open for those.
Yeah, and we would gain a little bit back in utilities,
Right.
not like big bang and bucks or anything.
But you're not stretching the staff is thin.
Yeah. And then one of my top recommendations other than those would be to look at Westernport. It has been long been considered for closure, and its usage rates consistently demonstrate minimal demand, with an average of 1 patron a day, sometimes even less. The data strongly suggests that the local community does not actively utilize the facility. From a financial perspective, if I were managing a business where the operating cost of the building far exceeded its use, the decision will be clear. The cost of operating the building, along with the strain on staff and resources required to keep it open, simply do not justify the continued operation. For a county of our size, maintaining this many branches has been increasingly difficult to sustain. Closing a library is not a recommendation I take lightly, knowing the impact it will have on the community. However, our ability to support the broader community is at risk. We cannot remain financially stable. There are alternative ways to provide library services to the area without having a physical branch there. And I think that that could free up around, it's about $50,000 to use elsewhere. That would just be closing the branch and maintaining staff.
Do you know what the cost is to provide services if the branch was to close? Because I know that was something like lock.
It would depend on the services. Back when leadership was actually working on the proposed budget that we have now, we had come to the conclusion at the time that Western Port essentially, it just continued lack of usage was just, it was weighing us down. And I had made a whole list as, at the time I was the coordinator of events and programming, I had made a whole list of different ways that we could provide other resources, but it depends. I mean, if you pool some of those staff, you could have an outreach. We have the van that is underutilized because we don't have the staff to utilize it all the time. So there you could have a person that goes and does a pop-up library, once a week or so, twice a week when needed for a certain amount of time of the day. And then they go maybe and work their hours somewhere else for the day.
Another point I want to make is, the resource managers that are in the different branches, providing. Georges Creek was not utilized at all. Western Port was. So I just want to make that both of them.
Well, then you're putting just one service versus a multitude of services though.
What I'm saying is neither one of them is utilized.
Oh, no, just neither utilize great. Yeah,
Is what you're saying.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that if we did want to be strategic about placing branches across the community, you would need at least one. And if you're gonna look at the two of them, that would be the one because it does have a floodplain issue and its cost far out exceeds. But then again, if you wanted to look in town, I would say Washington Street because you have South Cumberland.
It's like two different cities. I'm sorry.
I understand that, but it's still we're
Apples
looking
and oranges, sorry.
location
No, I'm just
wise.
saying.
I understand that was my branch for very many years, but I mean, we're making hard decisions here and that's how I'm gonna look at it. That location wise, I'm gonna look at, okay, well, there's these two that are close together. And then there's these two that are close together. What are the usage of those two? How do they compare at the end of the day? So that's.
If we're comparing between Georges Creek and Western Port, I'm pretty sure that Georges Creek is quite newer than Western Port, like just the age of the building. So should cost less to upkeep, at least in the near term.
Does the library own those two?
Yes. GC and West are owned by the library and can be sold. Washington Street is owned by the county and therefore there's no profit.
Washington Street, one meeting, he said something's gonna have to be done at Washington Street, whether it's an air conditioning or a unit or something like that, is that correct?
John said
Frostburg, an air conditioning.
Or a roof or.
HVAC at WSL, John said would need fix. I'm the manager of the Washington Street Library. John knows what he's talking about. I don't think it needs fixed immediately. I'm up in the attic of Washington Street in 90-degree weather every summer, trying to do preventative maintenance on it. And yeah, there are problems, but it doesn't need entirely replaced in my opinion. I think we're just gonna be honest.
Does county maintain that building
person either, or
not?
No, but I talked to the HVAC people in mornings that come there and they give me suggestions how to do preventative maintenance too.
Who owns your vehicles? The county or you?
We own the vehicle. And I couldn't get the insurance on what each separate one was when I took the. So then, which is, upkeep and insurance, I just split the insurance by the amount of vehicles.
So the idea with the vehicles that they're like fleet vehicles, that if you need, like if you all are doing a program somewhere, you take those vehicles or what are they used for?
So
What are they supposed to be used
Yeah.
for and then what are they used?
So the beautiful white transit van in the back is mine for delivery and that I use Monday through Friday, to deliver books. Those are the holds the people
Okay.
plays, the IOLs, any materials that need to go within the branches, I go and do that every day. So then that can also be used once I'm done the position around noon. Sometimes our maintenance guys will use it to do different deliveries and whatnot. The programming van was originally purchased for outreach and programming. The gold van was what we used before, but it's sat there for however long and we kept it simply because the programming van was not outfitted with the correct number of seats for the amount of people who were in it. So then they needed a way because staff are not given mileage when they go to events. So instead of using their own vehicles, that was an option, but you didn't have seating to get them all there. So we used the gold van. And at this point, now that the programming department has dwindled, it's not necessarily as needed. And also since the van doesn't even run, and for some reason we decided to keep it.
Is that the same old van that I drove when I worked there in 2009?
Yeah, I would say it's been through some things. So then the Prius is the main one. That is the one that staff will take down to like conferences and whatnot. And admin will take it for branch visits and things like that. So that is more of the vehicle to get staff where they need to be. The red van that's listed is only used by IT. I've never seen it used for any other purpose. And as far as I know, based on my personal experience, it looks like it's mostly being used for storage, which is not exactly where you want to keep your technical storage. And then it seems like it's mostly used for deliveries and maintenance, but I do think that we have vehicles that would.
So they own 3 or 4 vans?
We own 2 minivans, 2 transit vans. And a Prius.
Is that where you get the 6 cars?
I meant 5, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
If I was adding the vans plus the 6. You wouldn't
yeah,
put it
just
in there.
five vehicles in total.
And the staff recommended you cut that down to like the Prius and then one of the vans, it just like cut to.
That was, yeah, it's my recommendation, because most staff actually don't get to use any of the vehicles. So,
Like say, I go, you know, when you're thinking, order a book, it says it's available in Oakland or Hagerstown, how's that book get here?
so we have a guy who actually drives down to Hagerstown, because they have their own like local system, or even in Oakland, they have their own like local system, so they'll send them to one branch. And then a guy will go around and he picks those up and then he brings them here. And sometimes he delivers them directly to some of the branches, but Georgia Creek and Westernport are a little too far out for him. So he gives them to me and then I take them. Yeah.
That's probably a big concern.
Now his job is not paid for by us. It's paid for by the regional. But I would say I put gas in our van twice a week. And you know, it's not cheap when you're running to all the branches. Yeah.
And our poor outreach van, brand new, back there, hasn't been used in so long, it's leaking some kind of. we just don't-
It get used in the summer.
But it's been sitting for.
Yeah.
Is that paid for by a grant?
Yes, that one is what we pay for keeping insurance.
Can I ask a non-vehicle question? The IT position, how, you said you don't see the person who does it. I'm assuming that means that if you have an IT issue in the library, that's the person that comes to address it or
It is, he just,
doesn't do it?
no, he will, it's just more of, you don't see him around, he normally will come when people are out of the branch.
How often do you have IT issues that need to be addressed?
I never see my IT guy either.
Yeah. It,
No, I'm just trying to figure out, like, do you outsource that or do you keep somebody
Yes.
internally?
yeah, that's.
You know, that's the question. If you're constantly having IT issues, then you don't want to be outsourcing that. But if you maybe rarely have an IT issue that you don't like
Does
run in
he
the attic,
handle
do the
the-
HVAC system.
Like any of the issues with like the book ordering or the fines or none of that?
No, so I
So any
don't
of the
wanna
software
say
we-
exactly what he does, because at the end of the day, again, I don't really know. It's been a very elusive position. And anyone from the board will know when they asked to meet him, they didn't even get to meet him, so. Yeah.
It is telling, because I think about like where I work and I see our IT guy all the time. And that's not to say we have bad IT. I'm just saying, you know, you have an IT issue, you call the IT guy and he comes and fixes it.
And that's, I think there is a misunderstanding because most of staff don't see him and they don't know what he does. And so I'm saying, I don't know if what he does in a day fulfills a full day. I don't know. And I know that there are things that he does like our server rooms and things like that. I don't really have a full understanding of them, but I don't know how often they need maintenance. And he does do things quickly, but he can do them remotely. And so it's.
You maintain your website.
We don't do that. We pay someone. We pay a Willits.
But not your IT guy.
No, and,
So you have a separate.
He just handles hard,
pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
no software.
No, so-
He does some of the library software, but it's not much, and it's only
Something
some
we can
hardware,
add.
some software and some
It's just
hardware.
IT, it's not maintenance, so HVAC,
Yeah.
something that is.
That's not an hour position, that's a
It's a
salary.
salary, the salary. Yeah.
But really the hours of the day that doesn't come out.
Well, it's
It's
just
the position.
if you got rid of the position as is and maybe looked at outsourcing to a part-time or something, you know, then it would become a.
Could
Is
you
it-
partnership with the county, with their IT?
That's one of the questions, yeah, because I mean, we share, I want to say servers.
It's,
We share things with
The Board of Ed.
the Board of Ed.
and they work.
Would the same be true of the HR situation?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
They're either with the county or the Board of Education or.
Yeah, that isn't something that I've researched. That is something that I've brought up to look into, though, that, you know, that might be something to consider. How much time versus money is actually being. That is also a salary, but again, just kind of like the conversion to if you were to transfer it. And I don't know what other nonprofits in the area do, if they have their own or if they.
I do want to bring up that there's a Fair Labor Standards Act changes starting in January 2025, and then for all your exempt employees, they're either gonna have to get a raise to $58,000 or become hourly employees. So we may need to account for raises to $58,000 for some of the people.
Yeah,
What do we think of Ally's idea? Anyone like it, anyone not like it?
Which one?
well, I was gonna say there was a lot of.
I took
Well,
it,
it's a plan.
I took it as a plan where you do all of these. Is
Oh,
that,
I took it more of, here are multiple things I was suggesting. Take them
Yeah, it's
and-
ours.
okay.
Cafeteria menu.
Okay, first of
Yeah,
all,
like-
the 5 vehicles, I don't see the need for it as an executive director of a nonprofit. When I go different places, I don't even charge my budgets local travel. Now, my staff, yes, I allow them, you know, if they're gonna go travel to a client's house or to an event from their office to the event and back, 67 cents a month. And if I ask them to go out of town, they get the same as the state wages. You know, like the breakdown of breakfast, lunch, dinner, depending upon the agenda.
Are we at the point now where we can start voting on, this can be part of the solution, this cannot be part of the solution? Because it sounds like everyone's pretty much on the page of 5 equals is too much.
Yeah, and then we're gonna,
Say,
That's a
let's
good
make that
idea.
part of the solution.
we have, that's what I'm saying is, how much are we gonna save, like? Okay, so we need the one transit for
Delivery.
delivery. Now, if we plus the branch, then the expenses for that are gonna be. But the other transit is the.
It's the
outreach.
program, yeah.
Okay,
And
so,
I would say the 2 transits are probably
Keepers.
key.
yeah, because if we do close something, we wanna do pop-ups, we're gonna utilize the one outreach and then the.
I think it would also
So-
make up for the space we would, in the things that we would lose from the minivans.
And I mean, even if we get rid of these and they go for scrap. Money back from the, no, that's like, it's something.
But closing Western would be a good idea because it's in a floodplain.
But then we still have
You still,
that, the,
Okay, wait a minute, let's focus. I can go this way too, but I want to keep us, so we're talking about definitely getting rid of these 3 vehicles. There's really suggesting getting rid of these. One sits and doesn't even get used. One is for the executive director who can utilize their own personal vehicle. They have the money for the maintenance of their vehicle, even if you were to pay them mileage, it's still gonna be less.
For you to keep one of those other vehicles?
Yeah, one.
Either one minivan or the.
Keep the
Probably
Prius,
one of the
minivans.
Because if the staff goes for training down,
Exactly.
they're gonna need a vehicle that carries more than.
Or how often does that happen?
I don't know.
How often does that?
In the past month, I've had 3 staff go for training downstate, they use their own vehicle.
Okay, so
You
they're getting,
They got paid mileage for that, they don't get paid mileage locally.
If we decide to close a branch and we decide to make pop-up libraries and stuff like that, could we do that in the programming van, or should we try to keep a van, do you think, Hallie?
The program.
The program did, I
That would be a
actually
big
suggested that it would be better in the long run to invest in that one-time payment of
So the
purchasing
programming
extra
van-
seats and installation than continuing to pay insurance over and over.
That's different than the programming van is the van with the ACLS sort of inside. of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
The one with the awning.
I think that's a good idea. I cast my vote for yes.
okay, but how much money are we saving if we get rid of these 3? That's what I want to know.
Give me a moment to find that, give me a moment to find, I got 47 papers in front of me. And none of the other
Is
ones.
that the bottom line?
Okay, well,
When you
okay,
see this up here,
for the annual,
just keep looking at it.
for annual, insurance, and again, I don't have a breakdown of the insurance. And I asked Lisa and she said she doesn't even know what the breakdown is. The insurance yearly is $9,467 for insurance.
That's like
For 5
$2,000.
for five,
It's like 2,000, that's about my thing.
yeah.
yeah.
That's great.
But then, so the gold van is trash and there's nothing even really budgeted for it. The red van, it's about 1,600 in repairs. The Prius is about 1,400. It's the Ford Transit, because of all the gas and the oil and stuff, is the big one, which is about 7,000.
Let me ask a question. If you were to get rid of the Transit and keep the Prius, and it has better gas mileage, you wouldn't be able to do it because
I'd be taking more trips back and forth to
There's
pick
not
up
enough
bins.
space.
There's not enough space, yeah.
just want to make sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, honestly,
Because I mean, like, are you taking, 3 books? Are you taking,
oh,
like,
Big
yeah,
it's big bins?
oh, yeah, they're, yes. Yeah,
Just
it's
wanna-
not like, let me throw my free books
I
in.
know. Just like, so we're looking at reducing to 2 vehicles, and that would be a cost savings of $6,000. Just in insurance. Okay, so the other bits and,
That's
we'll
just
just look at the big
cost
right now.
for, gas, like that, yeah.
Okay, so now, do we want to look at salary? Look at branch costs.
I think we need to look at salaries first, the coordinator is a vacant position, right? That 40,000 is still in the budget. That position's not filled, that could come out.
Is this being done by 2 people?
So when I left, my position was split into two.
But was that, but were they given extra money to do the other half?
Yes.
So that position was eliminated, their position was increased
So
by
this-
20?
Was this,
It was, the position.
does that increase these?
No, 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 I don't know the specifics into how much each person got. I just know that when I left, the coordinator of public services got a pay bump from my pay. And then the coordinator, who would now be Kate, but it's coordinator of children's programs, also got a pay bump.
So
and-
that,
but I don't know if hers would then be
there's
equal.
that position not even listed.
Oh, so that,
But that would be
program
the-
specialist, the one of the three,
One of
took a
these
pay, took a pay bump.
So,
Well, I was thinking that that might be what the coordinator of program events is standing in for what Kate is now considered, but I don't
Maybe.
know, I do know John has a list to replace.
Yeah.
Okay, so, but one of these is increased.
Yeah, so I don't know what remaining amount was in there.
HR, what does HR do? Other
Great
than,
question.
I mean, they're responsible for letting you know about benefits, any changes in, they do that 941 form.
Your HR department run any training programs of any kind
So,
for employees?
And that can all be out.
Well, that's, so most of our training.
If we were to outsource it, what were we looking at? Are we looking at going with the county? Would that cost us a fee?
Yeah, that's, I don't know which way we would want to look at. We want to look at, or even if it went to a part-time position. Because I think the main thing is that I think we would like to have someone in-house who understands the nonprofit aspect of it and who, understands that we are a close-knit organization, but I don't think right now that the current position is using what would be equivalent to a full-time position. And I know it is, again, a salary position, but I don't think it is.
What responsibilities come under the administrative service position? Because a lot of places, those have been combined.
Yes.
HR becomes part of administrative services.
Our administrative services has done HR work before, but not fully.
Our administrative
Mostly,
services has a million hats already.
yeah, yeah, it's hard to explain.
Does our collections
That's what I was
management.
Yeah. I mean, that's part of what I feel, and I don't know how many other people, there's things up here that are off the table that we don't know about, like this, what happened with that position, part of it where it's gray area. And I don't know how I can make a decision if I don't have the numbers. Because now that coordinated position isn't 40,000 because it was put somewhere else, but where was it put? And no one seems to know.
Yeah, can we have an updated this? And I don't think this was something that we had to go hunting for, which I did not do. So could we have a list of all the positions and the salaries that have been updated since Ally became the van driver and Kate moved into children's programming?
Yeah, because I don't know what that last one is, and as for duties, it might even be nice to have and it might be nice to have a list of full duties, because, I mean, I can tell you what I think happens in those positions
yeah.
versus what.
This is where I'm confused, because that's already on a staffing recommendation.
Yeah,
Is that we reevaluate the staff wage
Yes.
scale and position. I mean, that would be a point we would say to the board of trustees. This may be a place where, you
Yeah.
know,
Well, that's more of a general thing. We're trying to get down in the specifics. of-
right, but I mean, I don't need to see how much they earn. I mean, I don't think it has any bearing on the fact that we're just saying to them.
We need to know that if we're gonna recommend that this position and this position be either eliminated or part-time, we need to know what kind of salary we're looking at. Because
For the same.
this one, and this one have to go up to 58,000.
Okay, now, then I understand a little bit more because I'm just saying,
And we're not associating any of these with names.
yes,
Is John.
you're just saying, you're just saying that would be a point we recommend to the library board that you look at HR and make that part-time.
Part-time. Eliminate it. and
Position, yeah, okay.
And that's why I'm asking, how much is that gonna cost? If we go to the county to do HR,
Okay, I get you now.
are they gonna charge a fee?
And then you're gonna say.
Because even though you're saving 57 right off the bat, if it's gonna cost us $50,000 to outsource it, there's really only $7,000.
I got where you're gonna miss it.
Okay.
So I just want to point out, because I'm looking at the position description for HR. And some of the duties listed are benefits, payroll, employee relations, leave, implementing and enforcing company policies and procedures, training, performance management, onboarding, recruitment, and ensure compliance with EEO and affirmative action, et cetera, et cetera. So there are several duties on there that would be difficult for somebody like at a county building to perform, onboarding, training. You kind of need somebody in the library that knows how to do those things. I currently work at Potomac State College, and our HR person is based out of Morgantown, WVU. I have never been able to talk to her, and it makes it very difficult. And particularly in this Fair Labor Standards Act thing that affects me, it's been awful. So, maybe part-time would be okay, but I would really hesitate to outsource
I
that
agree with
and eliminate it.
HR, our data grant services does a lot of that.
Yeah, we don't even have that question.
Coordinator.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, coordinator public services.
Oh, is that?
Yeah, she does a lot of that. And she's very engaged. I feel that
What
position.
about like combining, like, say, if you got, like, I know what you're saying about the HR person being out, but like big companies, they generally will have only one HR person at their own office that deals with all branches. What if you combined it with like Oakland and, Garrett County and Washington County have one HR person for everybody? Those three.
I work at a university that has distributed campuses across the state. Our HR person is in Cambridge, Maryland, but each of our units has an administrative person who is trained in like how do you onboard someone and how do you do, but the actual compliance and, making sure that we're not breaking federal laws and making sure that doing training the way we're supposed to and all that is housed at our university administration in Cambridge. So, it sounds like you kind of have something similar. This position is doing some of those duties.
And keep in mind, your executive director needs to be aware how some of this stuff happens. I mean, there is nothing that goes on within my agency that I don't know or that I can't find out if I don't know it. So,
Just to put it out there, as a principal of school, I was expected to be able to do all those duties that reported to me because I couldn't supervise somebody if I didn't know what they were doing.
that's right. That's not always the case.
Right.
But that's the way that I look at things.
Ally, what did you have listed for suggestions on salaries?
On salaries, it would have depended on if we went part-time or if we outsourced. Cause I don't know the difference.
What we can do is ask, just like we're asking, we need updated salary. Have we looked at if we were to reduce HR or IT or outsourcing, what that cost would be? So we did not get that. IT. That gives us at least, and if we get rid of these salaries, and keep in mind they're gonna go to 58, what it costs us or somebody else.
So if the coordinator position stays, it has to go up another 18,000 to not 18 to 58.
That's if they're exempt, they have to go out.
Oh.
And I don't, it's really not, I feel like that's just like I can't even think of the term, but like, it's not hard to make somebody exempt versus not exempt, right? You just sort of change their salary letter. It just happened to me. I don't know.
Yes.
Seems easy when it's, we're all, yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah, I'm not making $58,000 now. So, and now I'm in, but, the other thing I wanted to mention, with your ideas, Ally, is I think, can we look at people who are retirement age? And so you're like, we can see the disparity here, you know, between the executive director and the other salaries. And I mean, I think the executive director has been here a long time. And so I think a retirement package might be appropriate. And then what you can do is you can do a search for a new director, and the starting pay will not be 120. And the other thing I just want to say is, I worked for the library system for 14 seconds in December of 2017. Is that when it was?
Yeah, and then
It was like 2 weeks. And, but in that time, and I do not have a master's degree in library science. My master's is in children's literature. But so there was like this thing where you could go like do training, and I never did it because I was only there for 2 weeks. So the thing is, right?
Niche Academy?
Yes, I didn't do it because I was only there for 2 weeks.
No, it wasn't niche, it's,
Oh,
it's Laddie.
Oh,
So-
Latin.
The other, so that's, you know, something that's important to me as somebody who, you know, like has that humanities background, like how many of your employees have an MLS, right? Is that something that you value as a system? And if that is the case, then those folks, I mean, I don't know, I just think that has a bearing on salary too.
If you listen to the library community, and I know there was a big discussion about this at MLA, MLS benefits, at this point in time, benefits an academic librarian
Okay.
than it does a public librarian. And there were people who got their MLS and said, wish they could get their money back because they don't have it in the public library system. And no, they were really upset. But they're just now adding a public library component to the MLS. If you start looking at different programs across the country,
I just think that's something to consider, you know, that.
you would benefit more from a social work background.
Right. So, you know, thinking about when I got hired, right, like you could be on this list and not have the MLS or even necessarily a master's degree or a bachelor's degree. So that's going to factor into your salaries. And I'm like, just like Ally, I'm very pro staff. I think, you know, that I really believe that $410,000 is super important. But I think that also it depends on the qualifications your folks have.
And that's looking at full salary.
Right, exactly. So I just wanted to add that to you don't have to write it in there, but
But
since we're on that
four
topic.
staff members with their MLS.
Yeah,
There is the executive director, the marketer,
the service leader.
marketing director,
Yes.
service leader Prosper, and administrative services director.
And I think that's important. You know, I think that when you have folks in leadership, I think that's appropriate. And I think a salary might reflect that.
I put up the minus the salaries for each branch. Okay, so if you were close Westernport, you're saving 48,000. Georges Creek, 53,000. And Washington Street.
Renee?
Yeah.
Can I say something about, because it keeps getting mentioned about the floodplain? There was a lot of flood mitigation that went on after the flood went through Westernport. And my understanding that the town of Westernport, the building that they are in, also they pay flood insurance. If you talk to them, Charles, and they are trying to renegotiate lower costs.
Yeah, that was in one of our meetings and there was no, I don't remember, Bill, what did he say about, they tried to get a lower, it's just ridiculous, the amount. Because that's not something that's really.
And I think, I mean, things are only gonna get worse.
Yeah.
We're gonna have another flood. I mean,
And I don't care how much
I hate
litigation.
to be
it's
the
water.
bearer of bad news. FEMA was planning on coming in 2025 to renegotiate, but with what happened in South Carolina, North Carolina, that's off the table now.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, because they're afraid that it could happen. If it happened there where it had floods, it could happen again here. And unfortunately, FEMA's now backed off on renegotiating any flood insurance. And I just talked with the town coordinator on that, and that's what they got. No, they're not going to.
Those numbers don't reflect the cost of staff.
That,
But that's a cost, so combined, that's $181,000.
Right. Now, that's not even considering the staff that are here, whether they go away or they get redistributed or something.
But those numbers don't.
These are
include
just
Like utility?
minus wage and benefits.
Yeah.
The wage and.
Or is it- So it's just referring to utility costs?
so I just,
What's listed? Elections, events, maintenance, marketing, security, supplies, technology, and utility.
Okay.
That's what these numbers
Oh,
represent.
Maintenance and utilities are the two largest.
It would be.
That's the figures.
Back to Tracy about the director, I just happened to Google it. According to American Library Association, average salary for a library director is $68,000 for men, $61,000 for women.
Yeah. Into account hundreds, thousands of libraries that are run by one person in rural.
Right, that's right, yeah.
So that is skewed quite lower.
Yeah, ZipRecruiter says 99,000 to 160,000.
and he's
And
been
it
here.
depends
a
on the
long
size of the
time.
library too, right?
Right,
Also,
but you're
in
around
degree,
all the
do they
time.
have an, yeah,
EB and an MLS.
and a doctorate degree. So. You pay for those. I'm retired and I have an MSL in library science.
You apply that to the
I
record.
Point something that, I don't want to say old, but I've already had my career as a school librarian. I don't think you.
You want to reinvent yourself as a public library?
Okay, didn't we say cell phone?
Yeah.
Yes.
And that goes along with retirement. If you, if a person leaves a position, I think that perk goes away. When you rehire somebody, there's no perks. They pay their health insurance.
Yeah.
They don't have a cell phone, like that's a really big thing that we can change.
I don't even know if the cell phones are part of the contract though. Honestly.
In that person's contract, when
Yeah,
they sign the
like the
salary.
four people who have them, I'm not even sure. in that contract.
I mean, what's the cost for Brandon? So where I work, there are a few folks that have provided cell phones, but it's because it's necessary for the performance of their job duties. So if there's a connection like that, it makes sense. If there's not, and it's just a perk of the job, then that's a completely different
Yeah, I think,
situation.
if you're like on 24/7 call,
Yeah.
then you have,
Yeah, like we have a
An
maintenance
agency,
person who is the
yes,
only maintenance
yes,
person.
right.
I mean, even if you were to give a small stipend each month towards their cell phone.
Right.
If they're using a
Or-
percentage of their.
they all have office phones. You just connect those because Lord knows how much those cost.
The black phone,
Yeah, the black phones they're.
Are they
But
voice over?
they are the, but I was just,
system
Like the
phones,
ones you
yeah,
get
so
with
they all have office phones at the end of the day, so it's either eliminate the cell phones or eliminate the office phones.
What numbers do they? Awesome.
Do what?
I know I dial everybody's office phone more than I dial themselves.
Yeah, that's, yeah.
Okay, guys, so we have $10,000. Okay, so, I mean, the next, so we potentially have $191,000.
Right.
But we also want to look at the salary schedules,
Mhm.
right? I mean,
I looked at the smaller items that I was throwing out as things that would fill things to not be cut, essentially. But the big ticket items at the end of the day, we're closing a branch and looking at.
I mean, we definitely have to look at, and we're gonna have to do that the next time, because we need an updated salary schedule. And we also need the cost out. Yeah, really make an educated.
And the retirement.
And the number of them. But this is kind of with the usage rates that we saw in the first week. But keep in mind, you know, we're gonna look at alternatives like public libraries and why is the locker thing up in?
That was an idea.
That's another idea.
It was greenlit, I don't know, 3 years ago, and they wanted to put them at Westernport, and we said, so they're gonna, basically the idea was that people put them on hold, and someone would go and put the book in the locker for them every day, and then they would come to the locker and get their book instead of just walking into the library, and we said, well, if you're gonna keep the building open, why do we need lockers? So the difference would be, if you close a branch, then there may be a need for lockers, but at the time, we were like,
Well, I just kept thinking, I can't remember why we lockers.
yeah.
No, okay. But I mean, I think if our recommendation is to close one or all three of these branches, we definitely have to have an idea of what we're doing with the staff at each branch. The collections and, an idea of how we're going to get services to.
Right. And those three, no, so the Washington Street Library belongs to the county, so the board of directors wouldn't have to worry about selling it.
You know,
It
probably.
would just revert back to the county. This would be their choice what they want to use it for.
But at first, this is just closing it. We don't pay
Right.
utilities, put them up for sale. And then,
But with the flood plan, Westernport would not be sellable because of the deployments that put in.
Oh,
There
okay.
are two major the town has already moved out of their building, the American Legion moved out of theirs because upkeep was too much and they can't sell them
Yeah.
because of the requirements that have to
And
go
that's
into.
You would just have to give that building back to
To the
Westport.
town, yeah. And if they want to use it for a community center or whatever.
I don't want it. Might just be an empty building.
But you would
Put a
still have to
dollar
pay the
sign out.
insurance cost. The county, the library.
Yeah, but they don't have to carry it.
Yeah.
don't have to carry.
You don't have to carry it.
Because
You don't have a mortgage, you don't have to carry flood insurance.
Right,
That's your choice.
right. It was basically just for the collections and the replacement of.
And Renee, another idea I thought of that we didn't, and I thought about this like a couple days after, our meeting, and I didn't bother to go in, but, I know, some high schools in some small regions have the high school library and it also the public library have the collection for the adults. But then I don't think there are library media specialists anymore at the high school. or the middle school. That for Westernport, that might have been at Westmore, might have been able to take the collection and put it there, but if they don't already have a staff person, then that staff person goes up. And I know they do it in other areas, not just, other places in the United States. That's how they solve their problem when they close libraries and or reduce funding. They thought, how can we? And so they just, the high school, and they might even just kept the high school library and she got paid extra, or they hired more staff to keep it open, during the evening after librarian would have.
I've been doing some
That was
research
just an
too.
idea.
I looked at the foundation. There's pros and cons to organizing a library foundation. A lot of them are, to do a foundation, it's more long-term than short-term,
You
so.
can't even tap into it.
Yeah, and it's more headache than, and then I looked at, ways that other libraries throughout the states, increase revenue, and it's pretty much everything that we said already, and, they increase their revenue sources, they're strategically partner with others, make the most of the space by renting it out, hosting community events, et cetera. Increase paid for services, process passport applications, and offer photo services, which I can't even imagine doing that. But, offer what you already have, like hosting readathons, which we discussed all that. And have a presence in the community, move your events outside the library wall and reach out to local restaurants, blah, 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 and participate in community fairs. So after we make, in closing, when we look at salaries, we're gonna find some substantial savings there. Possibly closing branches, substantial savings there. Vehicles and cell phones, that's already $10,000 off the top. But all the other little ideas that we had will free up or increase revenue or free up. So next month, we're gonna really look at this, make our decision on funding a branch, and then look at the little things that we said we would, like eliminating what they are, but the little cost, just so that gives us a little bit more wiggle room to do some more programming or to not charge the community for certain things. So, anybody, anything else in closing?
I have one other question, where it talks about telephone cost explanation. It says it's cheaper, it doesn't talk about amount. It says some of the branches are cheaper. Crossborough, Georges Creek, and Westernport are represented by Comcast, which is Xfinity that does phone service, but this says that they're not, that there's no number there.
Right.
As to what, if we switched over from Comcast to the carrier, not cell phones, this is the.
I don't think there are any other carriers.
No.
That's the issue.
Yeah.
So this says Comcast does not offer telephone service. Comcast is Xfinity, which offers telephone service. I didn't understand this explanation.
Yeah, I think it is just, I don't think they offer them.
No, I have home service. It's it's landline, internet, cable. I just didn't understand here. It says does not offer, and I do. Well, then who are they under?
I have a breakdown, and this says phone service in Frostburg, Georges Creek, and Westernport is through Segra.
There is something that just happened, I think.
Yeah, well, I do know Frostburg had something, and I do think they changed providers this week, so.
Yeah, they had to.
Yeah, but then LaVale, South Carolina, Washington Street with the Breeze line, and this has Frostburg as 5,583. Georges Creek is 3,614, LaVale 2,026, South Cumberland, 1,713, Washington Street, 3,000.
Well, I think too, if we look at closing any one of these
Yeah.
branches, we're gonna look at reevaluating all services. I mean, that's gonna, I think, have to be a recommendation from us, just for cost saving purposes. Whether that's done annually or, depending upon what the service agreement is. I mean,
Statistics on how many checkouts and visitors for each of those branches can be found on pages 8 and 11 in the Viper.
Anything else?
So at our next meeting, we have to come up with our
Recommendation.
final recommendation,
Yes,
and then our January meeting
we
will
are
be.
presenting it.
Who's
So
presenting?
the full board will be there in January.
Yes.
Are you presenting our ideas to yourself?
I am mostly to the other. But it will be all of our collective decision. Okay. What's fun? And I didn't even get to use any color.
Oh.
On it.